Okay. Hi, Luke. How are you?
I'm very well, Douglas. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. So, as we were talking about before we got on, you have a audio, Audible original audio drama called Taker's Mad. You had said that this is more like writing a screenplay because you wrote it directly for this purpose, not to be a book, right? Is this particular drama, is this with a cast of people that are doing the voices?
You might think that if you listen to it, but actually it's one actor, Christine Bam, and she just does somersaults, creating all these characters and somehow keeping track of them. And so she embodies all these different characters with different accents from the time period, and men, women, wonderfully. So no, it's just one person, but she does a heck of a job somehow becoming many people.
Well, that's incredible. So she's doing male voices as well as female character. Wow.
Male voices, female voices, all ages, from different backgrounds. She has the actual actress or actor has a very interesting life, and so she has a lot of language experience, and so she's able to take on all these different accents too, and do an Irish brogue or do a Danish accent or do a German accent from the period. So it's pretty impressive. I was really thrilled to have her sign on and very happy with the product.
Wow. Yeah, that is incredible. So why did you decide to write this as an audio drama versus a novel?
Well, I was interested in the genre of audio books. I listen to a ton of audiobooks and I really enjoy them. And it's from an author's perspective, it's a intriguing proposition in that you really have a lot of control because in some ways you have the same sort of control you would as a filmmaker, in that you're presenting all these different characters and giving them to the audience in the voices that you intend. But at the same time, there's far less people involved. We have a director, a producer, and Christine Bam is the actor. But there's a lot more ability for the author to really craft the atmosphere and craft the story and have that be presented to the listener in a way that's literally, if someone's wearing earbuds or earphones, in their head. So I found it just to be an intriguing proposition. And then again, as I say, I love audiobooks, especially when they're well done by someone like Christine. And so with the opportunity to do this, it was obvious to me. I mean, I knew this was a good story when I encountered it. And I think an important story too. And would work in a lot of different formats. I think it would be an intriguing novel or an intriguing stage play or an intriguing film or whatever. But I saw this as something that I hadn't done before that presents a really neat thing to do as a writer.
Is there a narrator to change the scenes and set up the various things that we're not seeing because it's not a film?
The story is told from the first person, from the perspective of Florence Malasso Reese, who is, this is all based on a real story, a true story, a true bit of history that, as I say, is, I think, an important part of our past. And then the perspective here is from Florence Malasso Reese, who was the daughter-in-law of Jacob Reese, who plays a part in the real-life history. And so she's the first-person narrator, and then also via Christine's incredible talent, she's able to then jump from Flora, to the other characters as well, so they can have a conversation. Sometimes there's these scenes that the way that they're written, it's very rapid fire, sometimes even drama or almost comedy, right? Rapid fire comedy between three different characters, and she jumps in and out of all of them. So it's quite a feat. Which again, I was really happy with the way that she was able to do it.
Okay, is she also doing the narration?
Well, she's doing the first person perspective of the
Oh, I see. Okay.
novel, and then also doing the other characters. So if there's a conversation between the first person narrator and another character that they encounter, she would do both sides of that conversation. Or if there's three people in the room at that time, all all talking back and forth with each other, she's doing all three of those parts. So I guess roughly it's like you go to see a one-person show on Broadway where there's multiple characters that the one actor is embodying.
All right. No, I'm just trying to get an idea of how this plays, because so she would have to do the description from a first person. In other words, I was walking down the street today and I saw this person, blah, 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 like that, right?
Yeah, it's, let me think about this for a second. It's in present tense. So not I was walking about the street. Well, excuse me, no, it's in past tense, pardon me. But then so when she encounters that other person who she's walking down the street and meeting, and they're having a conversation, she's doing that, and then she's also doing the voice of the person she encounters.
Right. Okay. So she's speaking what she's thinking as well as what she's saying.
Yes, internal monologue.
Internal monologue. Okay. All right.
Yes. I had a hard time wrapping my head around it too until I got the hang of it, and then I just did it and it came out. But I also thought, how is this going to work? And then it all worked.
Well, okay. No, I just wanted to make it clear for people who might be interested in hearing it, to give them some idea of how it's going to sound, because it's similar to a radio show, an old-time radio show.
Exactly.
Except radio shows had multiple people playing characters, and they also played it in present tense. They used sound effects, things like that. Are there any sort of sound effects in this?
No, though I will say that if you listen to a lot of the great things that Audible is doing, there are other ones that are more like a radio drama. Those kinds of radio dramas have were popular in the United States, but also remain popular overseas in the UK. And so I think Audible has picked up on that. I don't want to speak for Audible, but they're doing wonderful things in sort of replicating those kind of earlier radio dramas where there are sound effects and there's multiple actors sometimes. But in this case, it's Christine Vam doing everything herself and just creating this every part of this world.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's an incredible talent to be able to do all of that. Okay. So I was going to say this was a true story, right, that took place in the late 1800s in New York City. And it was a murder, is that correct?
Yes. This was a really big story at the time. It was, the front page of every newspaper in New York and far beyond for the time after the murder, but then also during these courtroom proceedings and with the verdict. And then ultimately there was a sort of reemergence of the case a decade later, which we can get into. But it was a big deal at the time, and it's been somewhat forgotten about. And that was what was so intriguing to me, and that it was a thing that was riveting at the time. And I think now, as we look back on it, it has these kind of implications for today, and this real relevance today. Just in brief, there was a murder on the waterfront in New York. This woman was found in a seedy hotel near the East River, and she was in a very bad state. This happened in the aftermath of the killings in Whitechapel, London, the Jack the Ripper murders. And this was this period of hysteria that spanned both from UK to New York. And there was this great fear that Jack the Ripper was going to escape via transatlantic steamer to New York. And so after this murder, the coroner decided that this was a victim of Jack the Ripper. And so you can imagine what the very sensationalist press of the era did, Hearst and Pulitzer, etc. This was something they ran with. And so on the front page of every newspaper in New York, there's the story of Jack the Ripper has come to New York. And this became this big deal across the country. And it created this panic. And there was a huge dragnet via the police to try to lock this down and get somebody and quell what had been growing panic. Ultimately, they ended up arresting this Algerian man, this Algerian immigrant, and they charged him with murder. This was not at all, he didn't match at all the description of who they were looking for initially, but they proceeded anyway, and they ended up convicting him of murder. And my research looks into how that happened, but then also new evidence emerged and he was ultimately freed about a decade later. Well, when I started this, I just thought I was going to write this drama, this Audible drama. It was going to relook at this bit of the past that is I think important because of the prejudice that went into this conviction and how this innocent person was charged with this crime. But then I ended up finding in archives new information, new documents, new physical evidence in this case that's really, I think, changes the way we should think about it. I think that we have to really reevaluate how did this happen and how did somebody use their sort of connections to evade scrutiny. What happened is that there was evidence that was withheld for a decade. When the murder scene was discovered, the hotel room was locked from the outside, and the key was always missing. And it was always this weird sticking point that everyone presumed that the murderer must have the key. And yet, when they found Ben Ali, he didn't have a key, but somehow they just railroaded him through the courts and convicted him. Well, it turned out that someone discreetly turned in that key and used their connections with the governor and their connections on Newspaper Row to try to remain anonymous for as long as possible and then largely evade scrutiny. And so I would say that it's a good time to relook at how did that happen? How did this Algerian immigrant face this terrible dissection of his life and then end up in a prison and a mental asylum or several mental asylums for over a decade, while this other guy who probably should have had a lot more focus on him managed to escape by, and he died of natural causes a short time later. He turned in all this evidence right before he died. So there's the story that I wrote of Taker's Mad, which I tried to craft a drama that'd be compelling and would entice people to look at this bit of history. But then also I think that it's important to look at the sort of backstory of Taker's Mad and this real life case of discrimination and people using the system to manage to avoid scrutiny, and also some of the problems in that system, that justice system, that allow that to happen.
Okay. Well, you know what? On that, we are out of time, and we got to wrap up the interview. But I think that was a great description. I think that gives people a teaser, a trailer, if you will, like a film trailer of what this is all about. My guest is Luke Jerod Kummer, and the audio drama, Audible original, is called Taker's Mad. It is available now, yes? Yes,
it is. It's available on Audible, and it's also available as an audio CD if you'd like.
Okay, it's exclusive to Audible, is that correct?
Yeah, so you can get it through Audible, or you can also go to Amazon.
And buy the CD, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have a website that you want to give out, a personal one or one for the drama?
Yeah, it's www.lukejerodkummer.com. So www.lukejerodkummer.com.
Okay, and there's information on this drama and links for people to go and get it if they want.
Yeah, there are.
Okay, great. Well, Luke, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story. Very interesting. And best